John Locke's philosophy. Good morning, everyone. We are Inside Out Group. Today, we will be introducing John Locke's philosophy and understanding the self. For our introduction, may I call Miss Orpilia?
John Locke. The perception of individuation, the idea that a person keeps the same identity over time. It tells us that our identity is tied to our consciousness. Consciousness is the perception of what passes in a man's own mind, which therefore says that consciousness equates to our memories. Locke tells us our memories gives us our identity. Who are you? What makes you you? Are you the same person you were last week, last year, 10 years ago? What is it that links your past self with your present and future self? The problem of personal identity has puzzled and divided philosophers for hundreds of years, producing many different theories, along with some unusual thought experiments. There are two usual theories that is linked to this question: the physical continuity theory and psychological continuity theory. But in this discussion, we will delve with the psychological continuity theory by John Locke. Let's begin on how we should explain what we mean by identity. A person will change in many different ways over their lifetime. Take Steve for instance. A year ago, Steve had a beard, listened to punk rock and live alone. Today, Steve is clean shaven, listens to jazz, has a family. In many different ways, Steve has changed. Then we can say he is no longer the same person he was a year ago. We can say that the present Steve is not qualitatively identical to past Steve. However, when philosophers talk about personal identity, they are concerned with numerical identity. So, we can say that the past and present Steve are one and the same person. For example, Bruce Wayne and Batman are qualitatively different, but numerically identical, as Bruce Wayne is the same person as Batman. Now, let me introduce the story of Brownson. Imagine two people, Brown and Robinson, are both undergoing brain surgery, which involves removing their brain before replacing them back again. Unfortunately, Brown's brain is mistakenly inserted into Robinson's body, and Robinson's brain is inserted into Brown's body. The latter patient dies during the surgery, leaving only the person with Robinson's body containing Brown's brain. This person, which we'll call Brownson, has all the memories, beliefs, attitudes, and personality of Brown, but in Robinson's body. John Locke's account of personal identity avoided that sort of problem. Rather than bodily continuity, he focused on memory. It is our memories that connect together the different parts of our lives. Locke proposed that a person at time 2 is identical with a person at time 1 if he can remember what he did at time 1. So, if Brown can remember last Tuesday when he replaced his hands for hooks, then he is identical with that person. Since if a servant and prince switch memories and the servant had committed a crime, it would be the person with prince's body and servant's memory that deserved for punishment. For Locke, person was a forensic term, one that is particularly relevant when judging an individual for their actions. If someone had genuinely forgotten their crime, Locke believed they weren't responsible for it to be responsible. You have to be aware of what you have done. And if you can't remember your own action, then you are literally a different person.
Now, may I call Evangelista for our critic?
That consciously aware of ourselves often happens quite a lot. Think about what you're doing right now at this very moment. You're listening to a report, gathering the information and the knowledge that you see or hear. But are you aware that you're doing this at this moment? That you're listening and thinking at the same time? Well, now that I ask you, maybe you do, but how about earlier? This is the prime examples of possible flaws in John Locke's analogy of self, that we are not always aware of what we are or what we do every day. Faulty recollections. We don't expect ourselves to remember every single event that happens in our lives, right? Yet, if our self identity is connected with our memories, how do we know that we can get the whole picture if we can't recall everything that we experienced before? We can't really tell if we are the same person as before to the same person we are now. Lastly, inaccurate memories, inaccurate self. Our memories serves as a continuity of our consciousness that is tied to our self-identity. But what if those memories aren't that accurate? Our memories can alter quickly as a type of coping mechanism if we ever experience a serious event like trauma. This will give us a rather inaccurate memories that we may take as our continuity of ourselves, ending up having an inaccurate self-identity.
For our compare and contrast, let's have Marbita and Abuan.
So first, let me focus of John Locke perspective. Emphasize consciousness and memories as a foundation of personal identity. So, Locke's theory of personal identity is centered around consciousness and memory. For him, a person remains the same over time as long as they retain the same consciousness. Next, identity is tied to past experience and the retention over time. This means that memories and experience a person has a crucial to their identity. Lastly, focuses on internal continuity of the self. Locke emphasized that continuity of the self, the idea that who are we, is inherently linked to our personal history and how we remember it. In this view, our identity is something internal and persists through the time because of our ability to remember past experience.
What is self? My personal view of self relates to our self perception and how others perceive us. This interplay between internal understanding and others' opinions that shapes our identity in significant ways, which means our self image is influenced by recent trends and the feedback we receive from those around us. It also focuses on present opinions and realities rather than getting stuck in the past experience. It emphasizes a forward looking approach that values current insights and situations. Lastly, being yourself involves the unique qualities and values that define and differentiate us from others, which help us stand out in a world full of diverse individuals.
And lastly, the similarity between Locke theory and our personal view. First, agree that self is not solely physical but tied to internal aspects like consciousness or perception. Second, both see the self as a dynamic and shaped by interaction with world. Lastly is recognize that identity involves both internal understanding and external factors.
That's all, everyone. Thank you for listening. Once again, we are Inside Out Group.